So in this video, we are going to have a look at exponentials. And exponentials, as you may or may not know, are one of the most basic algebraic chapters that you would need to know in mathematics. So the very first thing we'll have to look at is what exactly are these exponentials. So you may have seen many times that you can write a number and you can raise it to the power of something. This small number at the very top, what it essentially means is that you are multiplying this number, the one at the base, this many times to itself. So 2 to the power of 2, that would essentially just mean 2 times by 2, and that would be equal to 4. At the same time, let's say 3 to the power of 2, then that would mean 3 times by 3, and that, as we may know, it's 9. You could also have done 3 to the power of 3, and that essentially means 3 times 3 times 3. So that means 3 multiplied by itself 3 times, and that is, of course, 27. So essentially, you could write it as by saying a number a raised to the power of b. That would then be a multiplied by a multiplied by a dot 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 multiplied by a, and then we would have to do this b number of times. And of course, they both can be any number that you can have. You can have 100 to the power of 1,000, or so anything you can do, you should be able to do it in exponentials. So in normal, what you call the notation of it, then that would mean that, let's have a look, 2 to the power of 2. Then this number that you're raising it to, that is something that we call a power, or some people, they also call it the index, or you could call it the exponent. Now I know there are 3 different terms, but all 3 of them, they normally get used in 3 different contexts, as we'll see in the other videos. But normally people just call it the power, so, and then this number that you have at the bottom, that is something that we call a base. So essentially the way you read it is by saying 2 to the power of 2, 3 to the power of 2, 4 to the power of 2. Some people, they also call it by saying that 2 raised to the power of 2. So it's kind of like a very different way of calling it out. But of course, in this videos, we are going to be calling it 2 to the power of 2, 3 to the power of 2, 3 to the power of 3, a to the power of b. But there are some simple terms that you can actually remember. So like, for example, if something is raised, now I'll just take 2. If something is raised to the power of 2, then normally people just call it a square. Like a 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared. That would mean that something is raised to the power of 2. If something is raised to the power of 3, then you actually call it cubed. So like 2 cubed, 3 cubed, 4 cubed, 5 cubed, and so on. So these are like the most common terms that you would also hear in exponentials. Finally, if you look at any number, like if I was to write 2, you must always remember that this is also raised to a power of a number, and it's raised to the power of 1. And that is a very important detail, especially when you are solving different algebraic questions regarding exponentials and so on. So it's very important for you to remember that any number that you have, if I was to write the number 5, it is actually raised to the power of 1, and the importance of that you will see in the other videos as we jump more into the algebraic problems that you can have in exponentials. So that essentially is what exponentials are. And finally, if something is raised to the power of 0, so 3 to the power of 0, then it is automatically 1. And that is a very important detail that you must remember. Oops, I think I ruined the thingy, but I'll write it again. So a to the power of 0 is always going to be 1. And that's regardless. And it's actually quite like I can write a number like, what is it, 100,000 raised to the power of 0, and it would directly just be 1. No questions asked, just directly 1. So just a quick recap. An exponent is something that you put at the top of a number. The number that you have at the bottom, that's called the base. The way you read it, it's by saying that 2 to the power of 2, 2 raised to the power of 2. And essentially exponentials just mean that you are multiplying the base by itself this many times. That essentially is what an exponential is. And if something is raised to the power of 2, then you normally just call it a square. If something is raised to the power of 3, then we call it a cubed. And if something is raised to a power of 0, then it's automatically 1, regardless of how big the base is. And if in every number that does not have an exponent, it actually has an exponent of 1. So if I was to write a number 5, it would actually have an exponent of 1. That means that 5 is raised to the power of 1. And that essentially is the entire introduction to what exponentials are. And then do check out our next video where we look more into the algebraic manipulation of exponentials. Thank you.